Good evening. Welcome to this I-24 News special edition on day 4 of the Operation Protective Edge, launched after mounting rockets attacks on Israeli cities from the Gaza Strip. Sirens have continued to sound throughout Israel since early morning, most notably with loud explosions over Tel Aviv, where 3 rockets were intercepted by the Iron Dome defense system this morning. And over 70 rockets have been fired since midnight and over 600 since the operation began. A short while ago, an anti-tank missile was fired at IDF troops along the Gaza border. 2 soldiers were slightly wounded, and alongside this, Israeli airstrikes in Gaza continue, hitting over 40 rocket launchers and some 10 weapon manufacturing facilities. Overall, 100 Palestinians are reported to have been killed. We'll take you live tonight to Gaza, Ramallah, and across Israel with our correspondents in the field. But first, joining me now in the studio is Dr. Jonathan Schechter, Senior Advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Thank you very much for coming to the studio. And just earlier this evening, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a strong speech. Let's hear what he has to say.
I spoke yesterday with U.S. President Obama. It was a good conversation. I also spoke with Russian President Putin. I likewise had good conversations with German Chancellor Merkel, with Canadian Prime Minister Harper, UK Prime Minister Cameron, and of course with French President Hollande. All to say one very simple thing. No country would allow its citizens to be shot at by missiles without a strong response. And I say that I will not let Israeli citizens live in this kind of reality. No amount of international pressure will prevent us from acting with the necessary force against a terror organization that wants to destroy and eradicate us. If anyone wants to harm us, we will continue defending ourselves.
Yes, Jonathan, again, thank you very much for coming to the studio. And, you know, we just spoke, and these are really hard days for Israelis, for the political system, also for Palestinians, for anyone who's experiencing this unbelievable, maybe, reality that we're living here for the last 14 years, because we're not forgetting that missiles have been launched to Israel for the last 14 years. But, you know, until when should Israel rely that the international community will give its support? Because, you know, every day that Israel continues to strike Gaza, the international support start being, let's say, less understanding towards the situation.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
The international support right now has been loud and clear. As the Prime Minister said, he spoke with President Obama, he spoke with other world leaders. The message was clear from all of them. They all condemned the rocket fire by Hamas and other terrorist groups in Gaza on Israeli population centers, and they all recognized and supported Israel's right, indeed Israel's duty, to defend itself. So right now, the support is strong, and we'll continue acting until we achieve our goals. You know,
when we are talking, we know here in Israel, of course, what is the reality? Everyone who lives in this region knows that the reality is not that simple as maybe other media are broadcasting and showing it to the world, because we know that people in Sderot have been living for the last 14 years under the rocket firing from the Gaza Strip, and they are suffering just to be on the field and hear the booming every single maybe 10 minutes. It's something that you cannot ever get used to. But at the end of the day, the international and the world is not watching it in this way. They're watching numbers. Let's face it, they're watching 100 Palestinians' death and in front of 2, let's say, casualties that the Israelis have. And it seems that, you know, the patience of the world cannot last for a long time.
I think the world recognizes that Israel is doing its utmost to protect its own civilians, which I think is why the numbers in Israel are thankfully so low. That's through a mix of active and passive defense. We have the Iron Dome system, which has been a phenomenal success so far, over 90% success rate. But Israelis are also trained what to do. They take it very seriously. They go into their bomb shelters. So you have these layers of defense, and it's very important to Israel to protect its citizens. Hamas, on the other hand, has the opposite approach. It deliberately puts Palestinian civilians in harm's way. So no matter what Israel does to avoid civilian casualties in Gaza, and the IDF makes tremendous efforts to avoid civilian casualties, it's very difficult, but Hamas ultimately bears the responsibility for that because they use the Palestinian population as shields. As the Prime Minister put it today, in Israel, we develop a missile defense system to protect our civilians, and in Gaza, they use civilians to protect their missiles.
Yes. This is, of course, this is an unbelievable reality that we are experiencing from the other side. But, you know, I just wanted to ask you, every time that we're sitting here in the studio, we're trying to examine what is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is thinking, how he is thinking. And one of the biggest claims that we are always getting to is that we know that Israel already had some kind of understanding with Hamas. We already know that Israel, in this way or another, negotiated with Hamas over the Shalit affair, over the Gilad Shalit affair. We know that Israel coordinated the entire situation in the Gaza Strip with Hamas. Can we be optimistic that the diplomatic solution is still on the table, or for now, no one speaks about diplomatic solution?
Israel is open to a solution, but ultimately, what started this round of the conflict was rocket fire from the Gaza Strip, and what will end it is the cessation of rocket fire from the Gaza Strip. And so whether you call that diplomacy or not, ultimately, that's the bottom line.
What about the Egyptian part in this, let's say, current crisis? Are they helping, or are they just, it seems that they're just passing messages and not actually helping to calm things down?
I think I'd leave that to the Egyptians to say what they are or are not doing. But Israel, as the Prime Minister said, we've been in touch with many states around the world. The Prime Minister spoke with the leaders of many countries. But ultimately, what will end this is the achievement of our goals, which is the restoration of peace and security for the residents of Israel. And it's no longer just limited to the south.
You know, we know that it's not limited because right now Israel is confronting some fronts, let's say the north, the south, the West Bank also. For now, it's still quiet, but it was a big front just 2 weeks ago. Let's not forget about what just happened in the three kidnapped boys and murdered boys, and then the murder of the Palestinian boy from East Jerusalem, and which ignited this entire situation all over again. Where are we heading to?
I would just say this certainly contributed to the situation, but the rocket fire began even before that. So the rocket fire isn't the result of that. It's
I've been saying that the rocket firing continued for the last 14 years, but we know that what escalated the entire situation was the murder and the kidnapping of the three boys, and then the murder and the kidnapping of the young boy from East Jerusalem, and just everything just deteriorated since then. But until when until when this situation can continue? This current crisis?
This current situation will continue for as long as it takes to achieve our goals in order to restore the peace and security that all Israeli citizens deserve.
What do you think that you're, of course, hearing a lot of reactions? Is there any certain, let's say, cooperation, although, let's say, the relationship is not that strong right now between the Palestinian Authority and Benjamin Netanyahu? Was there any phone call or understanding or certain help to try and solve this current operation or this current crisis?
I'm actually more concerned about the cooperation between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. We need to keep in mind that it was just a couple of months ago now that President Abbas signed his pact with Hamas and in effect brought Hamas into the Palestinian government, which lent Hamas a great deal of legitimacy and expanded its activity in the West Bank. And it created a situation where you have, on the one hand, you have Hamas, which says there is no solution to the Palestinian question except jihad. And on the other hand, you have President Abbas, who is supposed to be Israel's partner for peace. And ultimately, you can't have it both ways. You cannot embrace Hamas, a terrorist group, on the one hand, and say that you're for peace on the other. And President Abbas has to make a choice. I hope he makes the right one.
Let's hope that he will make the right one, and everyone will make the right decision. Mr. Jonathan Shechter, thank you very much for coming to our studio and for giving us a bigger perspective on things. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And on the military and discussion and the likelihood of a ground operation in Gaza is rising. I-24 News correspondent Charles Biplazer has more on that.
What only 1 week ago was thought completely out of the question is now a distinct possibility. Israel may, in fact, be inclined to launch a ground incursion into the Gaza Strip. After 4 days of intensive bombardments, Operation Protective Edge shows no signs of letting up.
We are employing all of our offensive capabilities, not without intelligence, not without wisdom, and not without taking into account that there are civilians in Gaza. We are attacking rockets, headquarters, command posts, tunnels, weapons, military infrastructure. And Gaza is sinking into disaster.
But as rocket fire into Israel intensifies, there are growing concerns that air power alone will not enable Israel to meet its stated goal of restoring calm.
It seems that only a ground attack could partially at least resolve the problems of Hamas weaponry and make sure that the interval to the next round would be much longer than it used to be till now.
On Friday, Israeli army tanks could be seen massing along the Gaza border, and some 20,000 reservists have been mobilized, giving the IDF the means of launching a land offensive. For his part, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hinted repeatedly at expanding the operation.
So far, the battle is progressing as planned, but we can expect further stages in the future. Until now, we have hit Hamas and other terror organizations hard, and as the fighting continues, we will increase our strikes at them.
But as calls for a ceasefire continue to rise, Jerusalem stands to pay a high diplomatic price for initiating what would inevitably be a bloody mission. In ongoing and intense deliberations, the Israeli Security Cabinet is undoubtedly weighing the benefits of using ground troops to crush Hamas once and for all against the associated costs, in particular, the human one.
Yes, and joining me right now here in the studio is Yoav Limor, the military analyst for Israel. Thank you very much for coming. So let's do a small summary of what just happened today.
Yeah, what we saw today is more of the same, more or less the same as we saw yesterday when we set bordering the Gaza Strip. Israel kept on attacking Gaza. We had nearly 300 attacks in the past 24 hours. Hamas kept on firing at Israel. We had Haifa last night at 3:30 a.m. The people of Haifa area woke up with the sound of sirens. Then we had Tel Aviv on few occasions, and obviously bordering Gaza. A few minutes ago we had Ashdod and Ashkelon and all the areas surrounding Gaza. So Hamas keeps on fighting. Israel keeps on attacking. And as far as I see it, currently there is no mechanism that will start going between the sides and finding the way to broker to a ceasefire. As it seems, currently both sides are interested in continuing in order to reach an achievement that they can bring to the people and justify with that the reason to go to that operation.
I'm trying just yesterday we sat down, like you said, in the Gaza border and trying to digest this continuing situation that is happening on the ground. But until when can Israel continue? Because we just spoke right now with the advisor for the Prime Minister, And I asked him, until when can Israel continue with the numbers? Because at the end of the day, the international community looks at numbers. They don't look at it the way that Israelis are looking at it, from the perspective that 14 years there are rocket firing from the Gaza Strip towards Israel. They're seeing an operation, every single operation, as it is. So right now we're looking at, unfortunately I'm talking like that, but 2 against 1, like versus 100. So
So I'll answer that in that way. First of all, the international community is not that bothered with Israel until now. Israel has a rope meaning time, from the US, from the UN, from Europe. Israel has time. But listening to John Kerry last night, there was what he says, substance, and there was the underline, what you had to hear carefully. He said Israel has the right to protect itself, meaning you can keep on fighting. But we call on a ceasefire, meaning beware, we are on your back. If you do a mistake or if you go further too much, we will come in and make you stop. So there were two voices. Currently, Israel can keep on fighting. Israel has the rope from the world because the numbers, you see the numbers, but the numbers are differently. Most of the casualties are militants, warriors, Hamas warriors, Islamic Jihad warriors. They are not civilians. Israel is very careful with that. It doesn't mean that no civilians were killed, but if we would have shown now all the films of the attacks, people in Europe, around the world that watch us now, would have seen where Hamas is shooting from the backyards of houses, from the front yards of houses, nearing schools, hospitals, mosques, etc. They are using civilians in order to bring Israel inside, send Israel to attack those launching areas, killing civilians, getting the world inside, stopping Israel. That's the circle we're talking about.
And let's not forget that if we're now talking about the Iron Dome system that is intercepting every single rocket that is getting to Israel.
And gives Israel time, because if Israel would have had a high number of casualties because of all those rockets coming from Gaza, the amount of pressure from the Israeli public on the Israeli government to hit Gaza stronger, to send ground forces to Gaza, would have been enormous. And then the spokesman of the prime minister, who sat on the same chair before me, would have sounded totally different, and we would have seen forces, boots on the ground in Gaza, way back.
So also joining us to this conversation is Mr. David Stool, member of Israeli Parliament of Hatnu'ah Party. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Shabbat shalom.
So just let's try. Until when can we continue? Can Israel continue with this operation?
Well, I think the time is a big factor, as maybe you have said, on the windows of opportunity, which maybe the international community is putting the pressure or not, and also the Israeli public. Tactically, from the military point of view, time is very important, but it's not something which the government is putting a limit for that. And I think we heard the Prime Minister saying time is not an issue for when it concerns from the government to the green line for the military to go on to make the most efforts in order to stop the shooting. That's the aim they put.
Let's try to look at the political arena just for a second. The last few days weren't only hard for Israelis all over Israel, but also especially for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, especially for what is happening right now and the division that is happening between Halikud and Israel Beitenu. This is affecting, and can you feel it in the coalition that something is going on and can affect or the continuing of this operation or the continuing of this government?
It's a very important issue which you're raising. The timing for the political crisis from, let's say, Lieberman to leaving the Likud, although it was something which was suspected. It wasn't a surprise, but the timing was very much a very surprise for the Prime Minister. And also we see the Bennett, the Beit HaYehudi, which is very vocally speaking on the militant and do much more militant operation. So for the Prime Minister, he become like let's say, the most moderate or most calm. And I think is very much getting the support from other parties and also from the Knesset and from the public for running this conflict maturely, responsibility. He is the one to responsible, and I personally I don't like the cabinet members going out and speaking very loudly, more politically to their candidates or.
Yeah, you see a lot of political talking in the last few days.
I'll say what David Sulkan said because he's a Knesset member. He comes from the police. Whereas there is a commander saying something and everyone obeys, should obey. In politics, it works differently. Everybody speaks because at the end of the day, there's always elections. Next week, next year, etc., etc. Again, there is text and subtext, as I said before about John Kerry in Israeli politics. Text and subtext. Text is we are all united behind Benjamin Netanyahu. He's the mature person. He's the leader, etc., etc. The subtext is like that. Currently, should we take over Gaza or not? Lieberman and Bennett are in favor of going to Gaza, cracking Hamas, ruling Gaza, getting to each and every missile, etc., etc.
Yes.
His leader, Tzipi Livni, Yair Lapid, Bogi Yalon, and Netanyahu himself are against that. They want quiet. They want to stop it as soon as possible, bringing the achievement of retrieving the quiet on the south of Israel. But more than that, there is the question of the future, because lying in the back is the question of the possible returning or a renewal of the peace process, the peace talks. Again, Tzipi Livni, Yair Lapid are in favor of that. Lieberman, Bennett are against that. Netanyahu on that is on the bench between both sides. We should see how Hamas gets out of that round, how Abu Mazen gets out of that round, and on that point, they're kicking each other under the table. What we see, what we call politics, that's politics.
Just before we're just continuing this conversation, I just want to check out what is happening right now in Ashkelon with our I-24 News correspondent, Shai Ben-Ari. Shai, how are you there?
Well, Lucy, just a few minutes ago, we had another air raid siren go off here in Ashkelon, and we could see and hear at least 2 or 3 rockets being fired from the direction of Gaza there behind me beyond the smokestacks there. So it's heating up again, apparently, this evening here in Ashkelon after a relatively quiet day. As has been the custom over the past few days, the evenings are traditionally, you could say, noisy. We were woken up here this morning, early morning, by another air raid siren, and there was another one in the late afternoon, but it was actually fairly quiet here overall, less quiet in other areas. We had 2 serious incidents in the morning. Of course, that gasoline truck that was mentioned earlier hit by a rocket directly, and a direct hit on a home in Kibbutz Ein Shlasha to the south. Overall, around 50 rockets, more than 50 rockets fired in the direction of Israel today, so another day of action. And we are seeing, interestingly, a greater share of these rockets being fired in the direction of the Tel Aviv greater metropolitan area, more of these rockets being fired to Beersheba, even to Haifa overnight. So what you could say is these distant locations are now finding themselves on the front lines. And this, the city of Ashkelon, is less relevant as a front line itself. So this whole new development is really reshaping the security challenge faced by the decision makers in Jerusalem. And in this context, another Iron Dome unit was actually transferred to the hands of the Air Force today, an 8th unit. And of course, each one of these units is absolutely critical in facing this challenge coming from the Hamas leaders in Gaza. Each one of these units, of course, covers a critical area. And of course, these distant locations are less covered when compared to areas like Ashkelon and Ashdod. And of course, each unit, of course, will help the Israeli government in dealing with its challenge. More are needed. There's no doubt about that. More are needed to sufficiently protect the citizens of Israel, and we have to see what the government will be doing in this context.
Yes, definitely, Shai Ben-Ari. Thank you very much for now for this. Yoav, we're just hearing about another battery. The IDF got another battery of the 8th one. This system just proved itself in an unbelievable way.
Yeah, more than in any previous round, this round is the round of Iron Dome. I mean, this gives Israel 2 things. A breathing distance. I mean, the government, it gives freedom to think and not operate from the stomach, but from the head, to take the time to see what's going on currently. And I'll knock on each and every wood, but there are no casualties in Israel. thanks to two things: A, the behavior of the civilians that go to shelters; B, mainly to Iron Dome. That's the main reason. But it's a system which relies on statistical figures. So there is over 90% of interceptions, but the single missile that might penetrate the system might kill each and every one of us. That's how statistic works. So it gives Israel the time, and it frustrates Hamas, because what Hamas tries to achieve in that round, it tries to reach a picture of an achievement that it can bring to its people. So it was trying to send divers from Gaza to Israel to kill Israelis, to send people in the tunnels to reach Israel, and to see people in Israel are getting killed. Currently, it doesn't happen. So in a way, it frustrates Hamas. It gives Israel time, and time in operation is all. It's all about it. But at the end, it goes down to who uses time better. If Israel will use it better, or Hamas will use it better. One more phrase, one more sentence about that. Today will continue as we saw in the past 4 days. I very much suspect that tomorrow we might see a halt for a few hours. Israel might give the Palestinians in Gaza a kind of corridor, a humanitarian corridor to enter food, water, to see what's going on. This corridor will be an opportunity for the leaders of the military wing of Hamas to get from their hiding places. Once they see the ruins in Gaza, it will go to either of two places, or they will be furious and go deeper into fighting, which will drag Israel into Gaza, boots on the ground as well, or they will rush into ceasefire because their people will be furious with them and they will want to stop it as soon as possible. In my eyes, tomorrow, 24 hours from now, that's a high point of that operation.
Mr. Tzul, we need to understand, Tzipi Livni, Minister Tzipi Livni, she tried her best for 9 months. She tried her best to make the Palestinians understand, to even make President Mahmoud Abbas stronger in the game, but it seems that in this way or another, the turning point came, and Abu Mazen Mahmoud Abbas found himself in a really weak position in front of Hamas, and also in front of his own party members, and in front of the Palestinians in general. Do you see any window of opportunity, if we're talking not even a window, a crack of opportunity, that Israel can get in and basically try to get back to this peace negotiations, or next round of peace negotiations?
Well, it's very difficult to speak about that when we are now in this kind of a fighting. Although I'm optimistic, and I must say that I've been in this conflict so many times on the streets of Gaza and the streets of the most refugee camps that you can mention in Gaza and the West Bank, and I can't tell you that there is any other solution besides of sitting on the table, not only with the mediators of the Americans or European, eye to eye with Abu Mazen. And I think Abu Mazen is a good partner. That's my opinion. But he's weak to control anything which is happening in Judea and Samaria, and also definitely in Gaza. He doesn't have any influence in Gaza. I think this unity government was kind of a camouflage. It more affected against him than any benefit which came from that. And I don't think Israel wants, and you mentioned before, maybe to go again to Gaza, and we don't want to occupy again Gaza. Nobody wants to control Gaza again.
But it seems that also Israel's not making Mahmoud Abbas any stronger. If we are more, we can say even more, that Israel is making Mahmoud Abbas even weaker, because even in the last condemnation that Mahmoud Abbas gave in front of Islamic states, and saying that he condemns the act of the 3 kidnapped boys, got out and said things against Hamas, and said that these people will pay. Eventually Israel looked at him and said,
well, if you ask me personally, and I said it before, it's not very popular to say it, not in this timing, and not even when the 3 kids were kidnapped. I said that Abu Mazen did a very, very brave and very important thing when he came in front and condemned it, and also in
And Israel didn't embrace it.
Arabic, not only in
exactly in Arabic and the language that everyone they understand,
and in front of his people. So what I'm saying is that it's true that Israel didn't embrace it when Hamas is still acting like from inside the government as a terror organization. But on the long term, I think you can't all the time blame or put the finger on Israel that it's not solving the political problem of the Palestinians inside. We have enough our political problems to solve, then we can solve the Palestinian problem. So Mahmoud Abbas have to take the leadership and to come front and say, I'm representing my people and that's what I want. And I agree that we also, our government, have to put our interest and say this is the limit we want to go, this is the borders, I think, and to speak on the core issues and not only speaking on the surrounding the issues.
Yeah.
I think it's premature to talk about peace currently. I wish we could do it, but you see what's going on. I mean, the fighting is going on. Hamas is not partner to peace. Hamas is an ideological movement. We spoke about it yesterday when we heard mortars and Qassam being fired from our back. Qassam believes in Mukawama, in resistance. That's his thinking. It can be a little bit more moderate, a little bit less moderate, but it's a resistant movement. We must take it into consideration. Sometimes it will go into ceasefire, but from tactical reasons. It won't go into talking with Israel because it's not in the cards, it's not in its belief, etc., etc. So Israel's ally is Abu Mazen. It's ally for peace. That's the only ally Israel has in the political arena. Unfortunately, Israel and the Palestinians, Netanyahu and Abu Mazen, do not find the strength from in between each one of them to get together and to get together in favor of their people, of us and the Palestinians. I hope out of that round, Hamas will get weaker, Abu Mazen will get stronger, which will enable Israel and the Palestinian Authority to keep on talking. But it's in the cards.
By the way, how do you see it from your own perspective, from what you saw and from what we know about Hamas and the military wing, especially the military wing of Hamas? Do you think that Hamas is going to get out weaker from this round of
Hamas doesn't need to get necessarily, obviously yes, because Israel has poured over 1,200 tons of ammunition on Gaza. They lose assets every minute. So obviously the answer is yes. If we add to that the fact that Gaza is being blocked from Egypt because of Egyptian reasons. President Sisi is against them. He's afraid of them. They are the Islamic Brotherhood in his eyes, etc., etc. So rearming for them will be much harder than in previous operations. So obviously the answer is yes. But when you go back to military thinking, that is not the question. The question is how deterred will they be when this round of fighting is over, and the scar of the deterrence in their belief, in their eyes, for how long it will stop them from firing at Israel. Because if this round of fighting will end with the renewal of Qassam being fired at Israel in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, we didn't do anything. The same situation will be in the south of Israel, and sooner or later Israel will be dragged to another round of fighting. But if there will be quiet for a year, for a couple of years, because Hamas will be deterred and bear the memory of him going underground, Gaza being under at constant attack, etc., etc., it will mean that this round was very, very successful, and Hamas is deterred from doing it again. That's the way to check it. Unfortunately, we can check deterrence only when we go to the next round. We can't check it today.
And we didn't even start talking about the Islamic Jihad and what will be if these two will combine and will start acting together again. Yoav Limor, thank you very much for this. And Mr. David Suor, thank you very much for coming to our studio. And we're moving right now live to our I-24 News correspondent, Shachar Peled, who's right now in Tel Aviv. Good evening, Shachar. Pretty quiet for now in Tel Aviv.
Yes, good evening, Lucy. We are in the center of Tel Aviv, not far from where just a short while ago Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had his press briefing, finally answering questions from reporters about a possibility of a ceasefire and the possible entrance of troops into the Gaza Strip, to which he answered that Israel is prepared for anything. The IDF will continue fighting the Hamas, and he also mentioned the mediation offering by the President of the United States, Barack Obama, in an earlier conversation with him. As the Prime Minister was speaking, apparently there was a red siren alert and explosions and interception of the Iron Dome over the center of Israel. We were in a secure structure. We did not hear this, and once we stepped out, I don't know if you can see behind me, it's quite quiet here. People are almost starting to get used to the situation here in Tel Aviv. Also earlier today, there was shrapnel in the northern part of the city, where we did hear people starting to express some fears and concerns over this escalation. I must say that with that said, the place around us is usually quiet for a Friday evening. The streets are still, you can see traffic and people, and these residents here enjoying themselves in restaurants and cafes, but still, as for a Friday night in Tel Aviv, this is quite calm. We can understand from the residents that they are on sort of an edge. Earlier today we were in the Carmel market. Usually on a Friday there's nowhere to move there, and it wasn't as crowded as always. So people are quite nervous, quite stressed, but still trying to continue with their lives and with business as usual, and hoping that this will come to an end soon. Although Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, today concluded his words by saying it's going to take more time. Back to you, Lucy.
Yes, thank you very much, Shahar, for this. Of course, you will keep on updating us. And right now, joining me here in the studio is Brigadier General in the Reserves, Rilik Shafir. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. Pleasure. And a former commander of the Tel Aviv Tel Nof. Yes, I'm sorry, Tel Aviv, because I just moved to Tel Nof Air Force Base. And also Amir Owen, defense and government analyst for Haaretz Daily newspaper. Good evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Lucy.
So, we've been talking, Benjamin Netanyahu, we just heard him just a while ago saying that this is not going to, let's say, end anytime soon, and it's going to last just, let's say, few more days. I hope that few more days. Until when? Until when he can just take this further?
You have heard the words, but I have heard the music in Netanyahu's comments.
You always hear the music in his comments.
And to my mind, he was quite moderate. When he said that it will take time, time could be measured in minutes, hours, or more. And he said in Hebrew the word sheket. Sheket could be translated into quiet, and it is not going to be translated into silence, which means that he does not realistically expect that the very last rocket will not be launched from Gaza, and the aims of this operation are quite modest. They started out by being modest, and they still are. And it means that the time is ripe for mediation, even though we hear that no mediator has yet appeared. It seems as if there is enough common ground to reach a compromise.
Before I will talk to you about this mediator, Egypt, the United States, or whomever is playing right now in this field, we're seeing forces getting in to the Gaza Strip and just preparing to get into the Gaza Strip. This is just in a case that Israel will decide to put boots on the ground and get into Gaza. Israel and the IDF and the military forces are prepared to the new Gaza, not the Gaza of 2 years ago, not the Gaza of 4 years ago, and not the Gaza of that they left in 2006 in the disengagement.
Obviously, the ground warfare that is possible is an unknown. And obviously both sides are putting up smoke screens as much as they can on what surprises are held what the incoming forces have, what type of weaponry they will use, information and so on, what are their plans, what are they planning to do. And obviously the Gazans are also using psychological warfare and what is expected once they come in. So this is an expected kind of a game that goes on in the predating phase of things. It doesn't mean that there will be boots on the ground. It is a leverage that could be used, or could be used as a warning, as a stick. So I think we should leave it at that it's unclear whether forces that are ready to go in and are amassed on the border are going to be used or not. This is part of the playing game and the leverages that will be used in the days to come.
But the fighting is not going to be the same, because Gaza changed a lot since Israel stepped out and did the unilateral, the disengagement. The people, let's say the geography, everything changed in Gaza. It's not the same place anymore. So, and we know that the only front maybe that Israel fought in this way or another was the West Bank, that knows how to fight in the West Bank, or the north border. Fighting in Gaza, boots on the ground, can cost Israel with a lot of casualties, a lot of soldiers who will lose their lives in this operation if Israel will decide to go in.
That is a possibility. I'm not saying probability, but possibility. Because if the boots on the ground will be used following the Air Force precision bombings, taking out a lot of the weapon systems, taking out a lot of the munitions, a lot of the capabilities, the command and control systems, some of the commanders themselves. At this time, most of the commanders are underground. They're not aware of what goes above the ground. You need to also be aware that the information of what goes on in Gaza is consistently available to Israelis much better than to the Gazans, because they're the aircraft and RPVs are remotely piloted vehicles.
We are just hearing sirens in Tel Aviv. Just to let you know, we are still here broadcasting, not going anywhere for now. Sirens in Tel Aviv. Of course, this came out to be a really a usual situation. This is like, it's so unnormal. And what we are doing basically is not something that the Israeli viewers need to.
For the last 3,500 years, or maybe 4,000 years, this has been the case in this area of the world, so we're used to it.
Let me put in a kind word for General Shafir.
Just a second, because we're just right now not really on the air until the sirens will go off. Like you are seeing and watching us, I hope that you didn't go anywhere, but we are still here. The sirens that we just heard and the rockets that were fired towards Israel were intercepted just right next to us here in the south of Tel Aviv, which is next to Jaffa Port. We just started saying before we went out, this is, let's say, the regular days that we're experiencing for the last few days, and it seems that no one is taking the time to actually stop and say, Okay, tomorrow Israel might go on, let's say, a humanitarian ceasefire, and what? What will happen then? Because we know that Hamas is still weak and still trying because it doesn't have anything to lose.
We don't have a full picture of the decision-making process within the Hamas leadership or between the political wing and the military wing of Hamas. We hear fractions of news reports, and we may know the full picture only later when it is over. So we can judge by what we hear from the Israeli side. What we just heard from General Shafir before the siren went off was a reflection of the Air Force school of thought in the Israeli defense doctrine, which is very successful. General Shafir himself flew to bomb the Iraqi reactor in 1981. And later he was part of the Air Force leadership in the late 1990s when we had the Bosnia example, where air power alone managed to decide the campaign. However, in Bosnia, it took 78 days, which Israel doesn't have. Right now, it is still a campaign from the air on both sides. Israel bombs by aircraft of various kinds, and Hamas and the other organizations and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad is now more and more prominent in the campaign. They, of course, launch rockets into Israel, which are intercepted by the Air Force, because Iron Dome is part of the Air Force. This may be enough for both sides because, as you mentioned earlier, there is this fear of casualties. Israel fears three kinds of casualties: its own civilian casualties, Palestinian civilian casualties, and its own combat troops. And with the firepower now all militaries have, and especially the Israeli Defense Forces, one mistake can cause a lot of damage, especially with so-called friendly fire. And in earlier campaigns, most of the casualties on the Israeli side came from the Israeli side. So leaders are rightly hesitant before they order ground troops into Gaza. If they do it, they may try to bring pressure on themselves to stop the campaign. This is not a military campaign. This is a political campaign, not a party political, but a diplomatic campaign in order to force Hamas to stop launching rockets.
If I may interject.
Yes, of course.
The reason that we will, obviously we want to have as few casualties as we can on our side, but part of our culture, and I can say this from the warriors bench, part of our culture, and I think our Jewish imperative, is that every life, whether it's Jewish or whether it's not, is a sacred life. You don't have to be religious to have that value system within you. And so we will go into great length to make sure that there are as few casualties on the Palestinian side as possible, because they're innocent people. They may not like us. They may not be admirers of the Zionist movement, but they're human beings, and they're people who happen to be in Gaza and are in harm's way. And as long as we can decrease the number of casualties, we will pursue this as part of a value system, not just because it delays international intervention. I think it's important to say from the warrior side.
Before I will ask you, because you were in a lot of battlefields, how hesitating is Benjamin Netanyahu comparing to other leaders that we had? I just want to move right now live to our I-24 News correspondent Eli Ochenberg, who's right now standing in Sderot in southern Israel. Good evening, Eli. We just heard here sirens, Eli, in Tel Aviv. You hear it all day, of course. Just what can you report us about just the last sirens that we heard?
Well, Lucy, as the salvo of rockets continued, the IDF is completely ready towards the third level, which is, of course, a ground operation. The first level of activity was and is the aerial attacks. There is a great satisfaction in the Israeli security establishment from the IAF activity. Many crucial, important targets were struck all across the Gaza Strip, targets that caused serious damage to Hamas and weakened it significantly. And the second level was, of course, the preparation towards a possible ground operation, the mobilization of forces, the training, and thinking about a specific strategy of this operation. And this strategy, the IDF has it. The IDF knows exactly what to do when the order will be given. And now, as we heard earlier, the General Chief of Staff, Benny Gantz, the only thing that preventing the IDF to go on a ground operation in the Gaza Strip is the level of decision makers. And you know, Lucy, Hamas wants this operation to continue. Hamas wants to achieve serious achievements. He wants to sign significant victories. Hence, we can see the heavy salvo of rockets towards southern Israel. We can see the long-range rockets, and Hamas wants to end this operation with a serious achievement, and it will not want this operation to be over until then. So we can expect some movement in the Israeli government to pursue such a ground operation. But at the moment, the IDF is more than prepared. The southern residents that we've been talking to all day long want this kind of operation to go forward. They don't want this operation to be over with only aerial attacks and slight IDF movements. They want a serious, thorough operation within the Gaza Strip, and the fear is not a serious factor for the southern residents at the moment.
Yes, Eli Ochenberg, thank you very much for now for this. And let's right now move live to Tel Aviv with our I-24 News correspondent Shachar Peled, who's right now standing out. Oh, she's still not with us. We will have her just in a short while. We've been talking. You always you tell me I hear the music, you are hearing what he's saying, I hear the music of hesitating, of not deciding exactly what to do, to go, to not go, to wait, to not wait, to attack, to not attack. This is something that we are getting a little bit used to by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Is this something that we saw in other Israeli leaders that were so undecided about what they're going to do?
I think the last leader who had the ability to defer satisfaction and to defer decisions was Levi Eshkol, 1967. And I think if we look at all the wars, the modern wars that have taken place, they were all wars that arrived by mistake on both sides. Misunderstandings, whether it's the Russians, whether it's the Americans in Iraq, all the wars around here, miscalculations, misunderstanding of messages, of languages, of cultures. And so in this particular case, I don't think anybody thought that we would be driven into this kind of a campaign. And when you can analyze it, you understand how it deteriorated where both sides didn't really mean to get there. So I think it is not only respectable, but even admirable that he is withholding the immediate pressures to go in and see blood on the streets, as you might say, understanding that strategically you have to make a decision only when you have to make it, not before. So as far as that is concerned, I think Bibi is outstanding and a lot more like Levi Eshkol, who was, some people say, our best prime minister at the time.
I believe that Amir Oren is just moving a little bit uncomfortable in his seat.
No, I tend to agree with Relik Shafir. I don't think that any prime minister is more than a first among equals in the Israeli system. And we tend to personalize too much by focusing on Netanyahu. He has the security cabinet where there is a tug of war between moderates and extremists. But more than that, and this...
But Amir, we know that this is not only a war on the ground. We know that this is also a war in the cabinet meetings and in the political arena. And right now, everybody's trying to just bite something from this operation.
Yes, but the fact that Netanyahu has made a comeback and is now prime minister again and again because he was re-elected, evolved from the fact that his predecessors were defeated. And they were, in part, because of what happened in Lebanon 8 years ago, which meant that one lesson that Netanyahu took, he also took it from his own first term, when he had some initiatives which failed, is that with the special exception of a preemptive strike when you know that the enemy is going to strike first, this is not what we are talking about. With that only exception, you don't go first unless and until you really have to, which is what General Shafir said, because politically you pay for acts of commission and not for acts of omission. Nobody is going to ask you, why didn't you act last week? But when you act and you fail, you pay with a commission of inquiry and in the polls.
Yeah, so if he's paying in the polls, and we're starting to hear some sounds of elections in the air, and people are still fighting from both sides and not even being able to solve this diplomatic. Let's try to look at the crisis. Of course, it's only the fourth day, but let's look at the crisis the next day. Can Benjamin Netanyahu get out of this even stronger or weaker?
Politically, he has not been weakened by the last several days, because only a week ago or so he was relatively weak, with Lieberman leaving their merger. Right now, politics seems to be frozen. On the one hand, there are calls for unity. If not in the cabinet itself, the opposition stands behind the troops, if not the leaders. But this is going to be over soon. And the intra-fighting within the Likud and within the coalition will resume. And in the run-up to the next elections, Netanyahu's position would be weakened, but not because of what is happening vis-a-vis Gaza, because of the economy, because of some other feelings of despair in the society at large. This particular week and this particular campaign will have no visible effect on the elections when they come.
Yes, and right now I just want to say that we have our own Shahar Peled standing outside in Tel Aviv. Shahar, can you hear me?
Yes, Lucy, I can hear you. And a few minutes ago, we've heard very loud explosions above us, and the people here in the center of Tel Aviv, as though they've practiced it in a general rehearsal, peacefully just stood up and went into a secure structure. And then we heard several explosions above us. As far as we know, 2 rockets were intercepted above the center of Israel, and one has exploded. Landed in an open field. We are waiting for more information about this, but I must tell you that the atmosphere here remains calm. People were looking into the sky. There's more curiosity than fear, one might say. And once everything came back to normal, people just returned to their tables in the restaurant, returned to the cafes and the bars. The traffic just continued on going. And so life in Tel Aviv attempts to continue as normal. However, as we said earlier, it's still not as crowded as a usual Friday night in Tel Aviv. And businesses around us hope to see more people, but still they understand why most people would stay in their homes this evening. That's it for now. We will keep you updated throughout the evening, of course. Back to you, Lucy.
Yes, thank you very, very much, Shahar, for this. I just didn't have the chance to say goodbye to Amir Oren, who just left the building without saying goodbye and without saying thank you. Thank you very much for Amir Oren, and also right now joining me here in the studio. I will say again, good evening to Ralik Shafir. Thank you for staying with me, and also good evening to with me Colonel in the reserves, Dr. Moshe Elad, the former head of the security coordination with the Palestinian Authority. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. So we just were talking about Israelis and the Palestinians, is how much this is, of course, this current situation, about the coordination between Gaza and Israel. Let's start putting things into order. We know that there is this the coordination between Israel and the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, in the West Bank. we know that there is a certain understanding or cooperation or coordination, let's call it, with the Palestinian government in the Gaza Strip. Gathering information from the West Bank, it's not the same like gathering information in the Gaza Strip. We know that Israel already had some kind of understanding with Hamas. What is the current situation right now in this current crisis? Because it seems that nobody is talking to nobody, or I'm wrong, and actually there are some talks behind the scenes.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't think that we have so-called security coordination or even collaboration, as it appears to be in the West Bank. With the Palestinian Authority, we have very good coordination and cooperation since '95 in all kind of areas, security, intelligence, and so. With the people of Hamas, there used to be kind of coordination in terms of economy. For example, somebody should get, all these 300 trailers daily that are passing through. So you have to talk to somebody. There used to be so-called the Palestinian Authority representative. However, they are fully Hamas member, and we used to talk to them, and we used to cooperate with them, while at times we're a little bit more quiet. Today, I don't think we have any kind of negotiation or any kind of contact in terms of security. However, don't forget that with the Gilad Shalit case, we have a very good relationship at that time. Few times later and earlier, we had some contact with the Palestinian. It used to be a very direct, but the people of Egypt were there in the room, but the talks were very direct. So now we don't have somebody who is going to broker, any kind of agreement. So maybe we'll be able to do it by ourselves, the two sides, but I believe it will be after quiet will be in the room.
Mr. Shafir, can you try to even start thinking about certain understanding or certain, let's say, cooperation or certain getting back things into business with the Palestinians in this current situation?
When you have two neighbors who have a high wall between them, and they have a common interest of some kind of an understanding on who throws stones at whose house. After the air comes out of the balloons on both sides, and people get used to the fact that we're at a stalemate, we're not going anywhere, then it's a question of psychology and the way adult people behave after they are done with first emotional response that takes a few days. So the next thing that will happen probably in 3 or 4 days is that Israel will feel that we have caused enough damage to the other side so that some kind of an appeasement move can be tolerated by ourselves. And I think the Gazans who feel that the actual fact that they've been able to shoot a missile, maybe even without a warhead, but it reached the outskirts of Haifa, maybe for them is a sign of a victory, because it means that they've been able to inflict damage to the Israeli society, and after a few days, they're ready to come to terms. And as we know, we got to this conflict without either side intentionally going into it, so obviously both sides have an interest in leveraging what they've done already. The Palestinian suffering does not carry through in Europe, maybe not even in the Arab world, and I think since both sides have no interest in continuation, there will come some kind of a brinkmanship. Doesn't matter whether it's through Egypt or somebody else.
I want to take you both. We'll go to see what is happening in Ashdod, and then I want to take you both because both of you spoke about the fact that this is a different culture. We're talking about the other side thinking totally different than the Israelis, thinking in a totally different way, and it's a different culture than the Israeli culture. It's just before we will speak about the cultural differences between the Israelis and the Palestinians, I want to take you, our viewers, to the city of Ashdod, around 35 kilometers north of Gaza Strip. Once again finds itself in the firing line as the missiles fly from the Gaza Strip. I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev has more.
Nothing less than a miracle in the southern city of Ashdod this morning. The huge blaze that erupted early this morning following a rocket attack on a gas station could have caused tragic casualties, but luck and discipline prevented a horrific outcome.
When the first alarm started, we managed to evacuate over 100 customers to the station's shelter. Then the second alarm started and a big explosion was heard. Then all the fire started.
After a tense night with ongoing barrages of rocket fire, the morning opened with another massive rocket attack. Most of the rockets were intercepted by the Iron Dome system. But one hit a gas station, causing a large fire. The station was full of drivers fueling their vehicles. Most of them quickly abandoned their cars and took shelter, as the government directions order. The rocket ignited a gasoline container, setting a nearby car on fire, in which a handicapped driver was trapped and couldn't escape alone. He had to be pulled out from the car and was severely wounded. 7 others were lightly hurt.
This will not be tolerated. Israel is strong enough and the Israeli public is strong enough in order to make this disappear. Hamas should know we will not stand still while they're shooting at us citizens.
Shortly after the attack, the Israeli Air Force struck the rocket launcher in Gaza that fired the barrage. But the terrorists who operated it were gone by the time the IDF hit.
Okay, so we just talked and we said that the cultural differences between the Israelis and the Palestinians are enormous, or really, really small in a surprising way, because Israelis and Palestinians really do act and look and live alike. But each and every time that I've been trying to make this side or this side to understand the other side, you will always hear the same phrases. You will hear from the Palestinians, yes, but you won't even hear yes. You will hear the Israeli occupation. And what do the Israelis expect? Because we're living under occupation. And from the Israeli side, you will hear the frustration. How come the Palestinians are not getting out on the streets and demanding that Hamas will stop acting the way that they're acting? What do these two people don't understand about each other that and how come the common sense that I believe that we have, that this side you cannot look at the other side in the way that you're looking at yourself?
This is what makes very difficult, brokers' work, because, look, in a basic way, I would say that those people are fighting on the same piece of land. Unlike Israeli and Jordanians, unlike Israeli and Egyptian, we are talking about the same territory, and there's no compromise from both sides on this territory. And this happens probably 100 years ago. Now, in this term, I would put also the Palestinian Authority, because they are the same Palestinian people. It's not something different.
No, when I spoke about the Palestinian people,
Yeah.
I meant the Gazans and the West Bank.
I'm following this society about 25 years, and I never, maybe more, I don't remember, or I've never thought that, one day some people, so-called from the left of the Palestinian side, will rise and say something, on the opposite. They are protecting their leaders all the time. They're trying to tell them how good they are, sometimes by force, sometimes by, indifference, don't care about what's going on. So to expect such a culture as in a democratic state, it's a little bit too high for these people. What can be done, and actually it was done in the past, is trying to bring so-called people-to-people movements, grassroots organization, which will try to, to bridge this gap. It's a very huge gap. You mentioned this gap.
Yes.
I know, I'm living with Palestinians so many years, and I know from both sides of the...
but you're living with Palestinians for so many years, and you know how the Palestinians they're just like the Israelis.
Let me interject for a second. Both sides have two problems that cultural problems. One of them is victimization. As Israelis, we carry with us the victimization of the Holocaust. Even myself, I'm named after my grandfather who died in the Holocaust. So we carry this feeling, and all of a sudden, the Palestinians are trying to say that they're victims as well, which is take away my victimization into their hands. And look at it objectively, they are victims.
The Nakba, you mean?
They are victims. And they have every right to feel so. But this is a crisis of who is more of a victim. So it's an ability to see the other side. Look in the mirror, see yourself, and understand the other side. So I would say that the first thing is self-reflection. Understand yourself, understand your inhibitions. And the second one, are you able to contain the suffering of somebody else? Which is play chess, get into the other side of the game and understand the other person's interests and see where you can give off some of your interests to make sure that your neighbor has dignity and has space. That is one thing that we need to learn. Another thing is religion. When each side has God working for him and doesn't recognize the right of the other side's God to work, this is a major barrier on understanding where each side claims that God is working for him and he owns this and that. So it takes strength of the people and the more moderate people who understand that we need to look at the other side's interest and understand where we have to bridge that interest.
Let's try this, what you just said. With Maysoon El-Kasmi from Hebron. Good evening, journalist and family activist. Good evening. Do you hear me?
Good evening.
So,
good evening.
So, Maysoon, can you try to look at the situation not through the Palestinians' eyes, but through the Israelis' eyes, and not try to point blaming finger towards the Israelis? And I'm asking the same things, believe me, to the Israelis. I'm just right now asking you, can you see the current situation, the Palestinians or the activists or more modern people, through the eyes of the Israelis? 14 years under rocket attacks from the Gaza Strip is not something that Israel can stay silent on.
First of all, just I want to mention very important thing that the Palestinians now under the collective punishment, and that's mean the civilian people are paid more and more, especially the women and the children. What we are seeing now that we try to be the quiet area in the Middle East, especially in Palestine and Israel and Gaza. Usually when Israel attacked and gave collective punishment, especially in Gaza, like a war and very difficult situation, who paid more than any people who are, let's say, under who want to punish by Israel from Israel, the civilian people. We are looking now how we are suffering, and now the Israel people are also, when they saw the rockets are, and you can see the psychological emotion for all the people in the street in Israel. We see when the rockets are coming, and I want to ask the Israeli people, can you imagine how is the situation for the civilian people in Gaza under the bomb, big bomb, or the housing demolition, or damage the infrastructure? This is the way, and they know that there is a rocket are coming in Israel, but in Gaza nobody knows. When the people are sleeping, they're coming and attack the civilian people. That's why we must have to see the situation by our human people. And now
let me ask you something else. Okay. Let's look at it from this way. let's say that Israel is doing wrong. And of course, the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip don't have any sirens and they don't know when Israel is going to attack, although Israel is giving a notice before they're attacking and asking the people that if they are hiding in certain civilian places to not to just get out of their houses. I am agreeing with you. The situation on the Gaza Strip is not like the situation in Israel. But you find it really normal that terrorists hide under civilian houses and by that hurt the same people that they are trying to protect? Do you think that this is something that is normal, that these terrorists are actually making the Palestinian people lose their lives?
Let's say usually Israel say that I defend by myself. Usually this is the media speech for the Israeli. And let's say, who knows, there is a terrorist, as you say, as you tell us about this is a terrorist. No, I'm just to say they attack the civilian mostly. I don't hear that any one martyr are a terrorist. Most are the people who didn't hide with the civilian people.
Maysoon, me and you are really both two intelligent women. We cannot say that we are don't know the reality and we are not coping with the reality and we don't understand the reality. We know exactly that these missiles are on the backyard of Palestinian civilians. They are targeting and they're putting the rockets in the neighborhood where civilians and innocent people are living. We are talking about people, your own people, hurting you. So try to explain to me, because this is something that I cannot understand, how a person is able to put a missile inside a family's house with babies and children and women. This is something that I cannot understand.
But I don't have anything that tell me that there is a terrorist people there. They killed the civilian people. I still say that the collective punishment are coming under what we call it is about the security, Israeli security. The people who you are call it a terrorist people or whatever, they didn't stay in the houses, but Israel say that I want to damage every house belong to Hamas. This is what we are saying. But Hamas have a family. Why they are paid this very high paid, and they killed the civilians. Even if if he has a wife or a children, why you damage the houses when the people are asleep? As most of the family, they killed a family, not one person. You know, this night, the last night, we can't understand that seven persons from the same family and 5 persons from the same family. What's gone? Why you banished all the people like this way? I agree that I need a peace. I'm calling a peace. I am a member in Women International League for Peace and Freedom in Palestinian section. And I high my voice that leave the civilian people alone. Don't punish all the people. Don't make a connective punishment. And this is our message as a Palestinian. We are suffering now. And this is make a push for the Palestinian people on all the street in West Bank and Gaza, that where we are going, our roads are closed now.
Maysoon, I wish that me and you could have solved this situation just from here. I wish. Maysoon,
I hope.
Maysoon Al-Kasmi, thank you very much for this. This is so frustrating. This is a frustrating situation because I'm trying to.
But I can understand her.
Of course I can understand her. Of course I can understand her, because she cannot go and say on TV, yes, of course they are hiding in our houses, and it's a really messed up situation that we cannot do nothing about.
I can understand her emotional situation and even sympathize with the way she looks at things. But I think after things cool down a little bit, and Maysoon will look at the numbers, and we'll look at the fact that even in houses of Hamas leaders, they were told beforehand that their houses are going to be demolished. And this is part of the psychological war. and they had a chance to get out. And I think the Israeli Air Force went into great length to make sure they're coming out. It doesn't succeed every time, but at least the effort is there. And I think in hindsight, when you look at a war and the number of casualties, that some of them are inevitable, you will see that at least the wish was there to minimize the damage to civilians and uninvolved people within that very, I would say, desolate area and the position that Hamas is in. But we have an interest to guard our people. And so when you balance those things, it comes out that this war lingers on very slowly, in a very careful manner, but we want to take out the Hamas weapon systems and their ability to fire rockets and produce new rockets. So the border is closed on the Egyptian side. They cannot have new ones coming in. They're shooting a lot of their long-range missiles. We're taking out one by one their depots and their underground tunnels. And when they come out, maybe they will find out that they need to find another road to get their hopes, in the sense of maybe find some way to collaborate and work with the Israelis. And I think they will find it, most Israelis, once they find, and a new generation comes in who doesn't have to bear their parents on their shoulders. They have to think of their children and come to some kind of terms. And most of the Israeli public will concede that we need to give the Palestinian Authority space and dignity. This is something that I think you will find, at least in the polls, about 70% of the Israelis look at it that way. And if the Palestinians make that little step, then we make that step and we come into some kind of a contact to talk about realities of life. It also depends on leadership. Leaders who were already born in Israel, who don't bear the Holocaust on their shoulders that badly in the sense of a feeling of victimization and so on. But I think you probably have something to say about this.
Absolutely.
It's like, can you make the Palestinians take a step further? Can you make the Israelis take a step further and stop looking at their background, stop looking at their suffering, and start just looking at the future?
I guess it's a reciprocal issue. It should come from both sides. I observed very carefully my son's words, and I should say, she sounds a very intelligent woman, but even most intelligent people in this society, unfortunately, are not willing to escape from two principles, which in Arabic, you may know, it's wahdat al-saf, which means the unity or the one line, and wahdat al-kalima, which is one word. And I'm trying to find the people, and actually I did it a lot, to find people who may speak outside this, a kind of a closure that they are in. She didn't say any word about what you were very emotional with, and I appreciate it. She didn't respond to that. She responded about other stuff. She couldn't say a word because
she could not respond to that.
Sometimes it's a matter of life and death. You should understand that in this society. So how come that we're discussing about change?
But she was very emotional as well, because she was trying to say, we cannot speak.
Definitely.
This is the subtext. We cannot speak. You are asking me to say something that I cannot say, that my codes and my values and my society is not allowing me to get out on the street and say, stop hiding in my house, get the hell away from my house, stop putting missiles in my garden.
I'm sure that they have a public deliberation and they speak about that inside the closed door, but they are afraid to talk about that. And when they come in, when you negotiate with one Palestinian, you hear a lot of, change and stuff happen there. When you talk to two people in the same room, it's completely different. And this is frustrating because you cannot do that. So we're discussing here a change. A change should come also, I completely agree with my colleagues' words about the Israeli society. It should come also from the Palestinian society in order to be able to do something which is a little bit different from what we have done so far since, I don't know, 100 years.
I think now we're in the heat of battle. In the heat of battle, we are the strong side, they're the weak side. So I don't expect them any words of appeasement at the stage where we're at. But I think if we talk to her a month after it's over, when the emotions are set lower and the left side of the brain takes over, we'll be able to speak with a lot more reasoning. And you know that I have a friend, a lawyer friend, who said once that a good deal is where both sides are equally dissatisfied. So we need to get to a place where each side feels that the other side is dissatisfied with the solution, and the broker needs to bring us there in a psychological mood that can be taken together.
But you know what? It's the Israelis and the Palestinians. I don't know how much satisfaction you can bring to any of the sides because they are never satisfied, which means that a deal should have come just years and years and years ago, unfortunately. But it's not happening. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for being with me in this part of the broadcast. And we are moving right now live to Ashkelon, where our I-24 News correspondent Shai Ben-Ari is there. And we just been reporting about a rocket fired towards the city of Be'er Sheva and intercepted by the Iron Dome. Shai?
Yes, Lucy, we have also received reports actually of a direct hit in the city of Be'er Sheva. Fortunately, no injuries. So we're seeing a pattern here repeating itself. This was also, of course, the case yesterday evening. Then it was 2 direct hits on 2 homes in Be'er Sheva. Also no injuries. A worrying pattern, and this is not the only pattern happening tonight. Every few minutes here, we are actually seeing rockets leave the Gaza Strip. There behind me, you can sort of see them come out. You see them for only a few seconds and they sort of disappear into the sky. In the last few cases, we did not hear any air raid sirens go off. The meaning of this is that this city, Ashkelon, was not the target, and these are probably the rockets that are being fired to the north of here. As you mentioned earlier, I'm sure rockets going, air raid sirens going off in Tel Aviv and in other areas, adjacent areas to the north of here. So here in Ashkelon, you can actually see rockets being fired in other areas because this is on the way, so to speak. So the pattern of rockets being fired in the evening time has resumed. This was the case over the past several evenings, even after a quiet day today earlier here in Ashkelon. But we are seeing it heating up again this evening as evenings before.
Hi, Ben-Ari. Thank you very, very much for this for now. And of course, we will get back to you. And joining me right now in the studio is Mr. Dani Ayalon, former Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel and Intelligence, also defense analyst. Yossi Melman. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Thank you very
Good evening.
much for coming. It's been, of course, hard 4 days for the Israelis, for the Palestinian, for the Israeli government, for the Palestinian government, for every single side in this story. Yossi, I want to start with you and I want to ask you, how is Iran looking at this current crisis?
It's an interesting question. I didn't see any comments from Iran. Certainly they support the Palestinians. But on the other hand, I don't think they like very much nowadays Hamas. They broke their relations with Hamas on the background of the Syrian civil war. They stopped financing Hamas as they did in the past. They have still a stronghold in Gaza. This is the Islamic Jihad.
Which means that if we're talking about the Islamic Jihad, and which means that this is a battle between Hamas and Islamic Jihad right now in the Gaza Strip. At the end of this operation, in a case that Hamas will get stronger in this current round of operation, will Hamas try to join hands with the Islamic Jihad, or will they fight themselves in the Gaza Strip?
Well, they are now in a kind of a national coalition. They are coordinating their attacks against Israel. Interestingly enough, yesterday, the two organizations claimed responsibility for launching missiles at Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is important for both of them. So I assume...
May I ask, but what happens, God forbid, if they hit Al-Aqsa Mosque? They don't take into consideration this?
Well, it's a good question. Probably they'll blame Israel for it.
Yeah, and this is exactly what someone just whispered in my ear. Before, of course, we want to just see and talk about the international community and how the international community is looking at this entire situation. Let's see the reactions. The international community continues to express different views regarding the situation in Israel and in the Gaza Strip. Last night, U.S. President Barack Obama offered his help to Benjamin Netanyahu in negotiating with Hamas. Other world leaders, such as Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, showed concern about a possible Israeli ground invasion. I-24 News reporter Uri Shapira explains.
Operation Protective Edge is in its fourth day, and world leaders are not remaining indifferent to the situation in Gaza and Israel. U.S. President Barack Obama spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Thursday night and suggested the U.S. mediate between Israel and Hamas in order to reach a ceasefire. The White House quoted Obama saying he reiterated the United States' strong condemnation of continuing rocket fire into Israel by Hamas and other terrorist organizations in Gaza and reaffirmed Israel's right to defend itself against these attacks. Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, on a visit to Beijing, had also voiced support for Israel.
No country can accept rocket fire aimed at civilians, and we support completely Israel's right to defend itself against these vicious attacks.
Meanwhile, Turkish President Abdullah Gül cautioned Israel not to launch a ground invasion and suggested that the violence in Gaza could spread to other areas in the Middle East.
I'm calling on Israel to stop the offensive. We hear that Israel is getting ready for a ground attack. I warn Israel not to launch this attack. I want to remind them this would trigger extremely dangerous and harmful trends and sow seeds of hatred in the region.
Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan went even farther, saying, quote, "There can be no normalization between Turkey and Israel as long as the Israeli offensive in Gaza continues." And in Iran, President Hassan Rouhani also got into the act, saying in written statement, "Helping the oppressed Palestinian people and preventing the aggressive acts of the Zionist regime are the shared responsibility of all international institutions and the world's freedom-seeking countries." History shows that Netanyahu tends to take international reactions seriously. Now, when a ground invasion appears a realistic option, he will have to decide which calls to listen to, those to stop the Israeli operation or those calling on him into the heart of Gaza Strip, full speed ahead.
So, Mr. Dani Ayalon, let's try to look at it from the international point of view, because until now, the international community, we can say, is supportive. But until when?
Well, until, God forbid, there is a crisis. If many uninvolved will be hurt, of course, it would be starting the closing in. But I think there is a credit to Mr. Netanyahu. I know he's been accused of hesitation, of not really taking decisive action, but I think in this case, his calm, his calculated action is reaping now the results of giving Israel the latitude and the space to continue and to do it, to do what they need to do.
Yeah, we just can report about 2 people who got injured in the last attack on the city of Beersheba. We still don't know if they were slightly injured or severely injured. The international, and we continue the international community that until when they can stop. But Benjamin Netanyahu was also sending a message to the international community. Was this message, from what you know, was the subtext is, okay, maybe it's time for us to sit down and try to solve the problem with Hamas once and for all? Or is it again the message that he's sending when he speaks about Iran, that, okay, if you don't want to solve the problem, I'm going to solve the problem?
Well, we all know that to solve the problem, by ourselves, I mean, although it may be doable, but it will take a lot of time with really serious consequences. You know, you'll have to retake the entire Gaza. You'll have to really have a mop-up operation, intensive from house to house. That could be really with serious consequences. On the other hand, if you do not have an exit strategy, you cannot go in. I think we have learned a lesson from Afghanistan, from Iraq. You know what, if we go back even from Vietnam of the Americans. So I think there is now more understanding within the leaders, I would say, especially leaders of Western countries, that one hand, they have to heed to the public opinion, but on the other hand, they have to really be responsible of the exit strategy. And I think here we see, and the world understands even more now, and this is why I think Israel also is getting a lot of support at this point. This is an asymmetric war, not only in the sense that you have one government and regular army, and on the other hand, you have guerrilla-type terrorists. It's also that the guerrilla-type terrorists today have capabilities of regular armies. You see the arsenal of Hamas, which is huge, which is more accurate, which is longer range. They have command and control. They can do diversion actions. They can do infiltrations, as they tried in Zikim and with the tunnels. So there is more understanding for Israel that in order to bring down Hamas, harsh measures could be and should be taken. Also, on the other hand, I think there has been developments in the international law. Since World War II, the international law has been changed. So, you know, war crimes have been now introduced. This also, until now, helped the terrorists, because they would come out of human shields, attack, and go back. And then without any opportunity for the democracy sides to attack. This is already changing as well, in the sense that Hamas is now put to blame because they are doing double war crime. They are targeting civilian populations in Israel, and they are hiding among civilian populations in Gaza.
But we cannot forget that in Gaza, we see just since the beginning of the operation, 100 people got killed in this. And how can you start explaining this to the world when 100 civilians, when you hear this woman that, Maysoon, that just an activist just spoke with me, and she's saying one family just get wiped out from the surface. This is
horrible. You're right. This
you cannot even start explaining to the international
community. This is horrible,
community.
and I know. But again, I hope that there will also be some reckoning time. There will be some maturity among the Gaza, so that they would put the ultimate blame on the Hamas. I mean, we're not targeting them. Of course, we don't want to, but sometimes we know that. You know that the operation, the IDF now, the Air Force, is trying all kinds of sophisticated means. You know, they are degrading the weapons so they will not have a collateral damage and will be more pinpointed. Before attacking, they are sending messages for people to clear the area. So they have learned from previous operations to minimize, but every time there is a casualty of uninvolved, it's a tragedy. I hope that the people of Gaza, at the end of the day, will turn their grief and their anger against Hamas.
Mr. Ayalon here just mentioned the guerrilla fighting, that it's becoming totally regular military army, like in every meaning of it. Is it so? Is it like, let's take a bad scenario where the northern part of Israel will open up again, and for example, there will be a third Lebanon war. Will this Lebanon war be the same like the second Lebanon war? Because at that time it was different between IDF and guerrilla, but we know that the guerrilla that we're talking about, it's not the same guerrilla fighting.
Well, already in the second Lebanese war in 2006, we witnessed the semi-military structure of Hezbollah. Actually, what you see now in Gaza is sort of a copycat of replicating the Hezbollah tactics. Now, if, God forbid, there is another war with Hezbollah, it would be a different war. Hezbollah would try to take to move the war to Israel, to the northern Galilee. They they said it publicly. Nasrallah said it, and they have plans to take over some Israeli rural communities in the area. And above all, while Hamas used to have, before the outbreak of this round of violence, around 8,000 to 10,000 rockets of all sorts, short range, medium range, and the longer ones, Hezbollah has 100,000, 100,000. It's 10 times more than Hamas has. So you can imagine what shape the next war with Lebanon would take.
So just try to explain to me. We know that from everything that we're understanding and everything from what we're trying to analyze, that Hezbollah doesn't want to start a front with Israel. How come Hamas is not learning from their big brother understanding and actually going into a war that at the end of the day they will lose in it?
Well, that's a good question. But the truth is that neither Hamas nor Israel wanted that war. I mean, here is not the time and the place to reconstruct how it began. But it began with the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli students, boys, teenagers. Then Israel began a mop-up operation against Hamas in the West Bank. Hamas, and even more so, the renegade jihad organizations in Gaza started launching rockets against Israel. The Israeli government was very restrained, and this is to the credit of Prime Minister Netanyahu, who was under tremendous pressure for Foreign Minister Lieberman and right-wing ministers to go into an action, and he restrained them and the military for 10 days, and then there was no other choice. So Israel decided to retaliate. So no one wanted this war. So to answer your question, they didn't plan the war, and therefore they didn't think about the consequences of that war. And when they get out of their bunkers, they would realize that their major military structures, command and control posts, their communication lines, their underground launching pads, a lot of the tunnels which they build in Gaza, and above all their government facilities are destroyed. Maybe they don't know it yet, or they don't have the full picture because they are underground.
We want to start talking just a little bit about the decision making of Benjamin Netanyahu. What is sometimes a little bit we cannot understand it. I just want to go right now to the south again in Sderot, where our I-24 News correspondent Eli Ochenberg is there. Eli, we just know, and we are reporting about one person who got injured in the last attack on Beersheba. What can you update us about him? What is his current situation?
Well, Lucy, this is a very initial information. We know that there's one person who got injured in Beersheba from a direct hit. We will, of course, update you with more details, but I can say that here in Sderot is relatively quiet this evening. And the story of the residents of southern Israel in the last 2 or 3 days maybe is that they put their fears aside. They are used to these sorts of realities, and they want that the Israeli government will pursue a ground operation in the Gaza Strip that will end the rocket launching from the Strip towards Israel. The residents of southern Israel are dealing with this reality not only at times of war or special operations like this now, but all during the year. They have rockets here and there, and this is not the reality they want to live in. They want the IDF to go forward with a ground operation that will severely damage Hamas, that will make a statement that it doesn't worth it for them to keep on launching rockets towards Israel and to bring this crazy reality to an end. So a lot of bravery among the southern residents, and they are, of course, like the rest of us, waiting to hear what will the level of decision makers will decide regarding a ground operation within the Gaza Strip.
Yes, Eli Ochenberg, thank you very much for this. We started talking about Benjamin Netanyahu, and in one way or another, we can say that he was really not eager to go on to this operation and to launch this operation, but it seems that each and every time that I hear him lately, he is less and less has this strong ability to decide. He's less and less, he's weaker. It seems that Benjamin Netanyahu is losing his power. And maybe it's because the current political battle that he has also that he needs to struggle, and it is affecting the decision-making on the ground.
Well, mostly, Lucy, he is very, very lonely. Even within his own party, he doesn't have a majority. Most of his members of Knesset are from a very, very right-wing philosophy. This is part of the primary system, how the settlers movement have hijacked, some of the Likud institutions, many explanations, but he's very, very lonely. I would say that typically, if you look at his record, Netanyahu, I think, by nature, doesn't want to make decisions. He has not taken any bold moves, not politically, not even militarily in this case.
We're saying that right now there are sirens again in Tel Aviv. We're staying here. We're not going anywhere for now. Not to our viewers, please. If we have any viewers from Israel, and because we're not broadcasting in Israel, but if we have any viewers from Israel, please just leave the TV and go find a shelter.
So I'm saying I think he is decision-making averse. If he doesn't have to take a decisive step, he won't do it. Even politically, Lucy, they were saying because of the situation now that Bibi is in within the Likud, is very much resembles the situation of late Ariel Sharon in 2005 when he broke away from Likud, because what Bibi Netanyahu did to Arik Sharon in 2005 before the disengagement, other Likud members are doing to Netanyahu. Now, Sharon took a decision and he split Likud. Bibi is not capable of doing that.
And he went out really strong.
Exactly. And now they say if Bibi, for instance, would split Likud again and would run again or would create a new bloc, kind of a center bloc or a center-right bloc, he could be even stronger. But he is not taking any decisions. So this is, I would say, by nature. Now, if we come back to this operation, I think also in the beginning, he really heeded the advice of Mr. Ya'alon, the defense minister, and the entire defense establishment. Also, he learned the lesson of Ehud Olmert, who went into the Second Lebanon War without any preparation. He made very, very strong declarations. He put the army in a situation that was almost untenable, because when you have to recruit, you have to train, you have to do many things before you just go in blindly.
Of course.
So all of this, I think, factor in the decision making and in the very, very calculated way that Netanyahu is leading the cabinet now.
And I just want now to move live to Gaza. With me right now from the studio there is Ala El-Masharwi, journalist from the Gaza Strip. Good evening, Ala. What can you update us about the current situation in the Gaza Strip right now?
My name is Ala Mashharawi. What I want to tell you that the situation in Gaza is very bad. Situation is very strong. Very dangerous. We are waiting now for Israeli attacking. We used to receive this attacking each nightly, Israel all the time smashing and attacking the people, the honest people in the crowded area, killing people. This is the bank of its targets. I think it's very bad targets and very mistake targets. Now we are hearing what Israel want to. Yes.
Ala, like we presented you as you are a journalist from Gaza. You know, I'm not expecting you to go out right now and go against what Hamas is doing, because we cannot say that what Hamas is doing right now and what the Islamic Jihad is doing right now in the Gaza Strip is basically in the benefit of the people who are living in Gaza, because you know that at the end of the day, when things like that happen, when there are missiles targeted towards Israel and fired towards Israel, at the end of the day, not the Hamas and not the Islamic Jihad, but the people who are paying the price are the people who are living in Gaza, our families, our children, our journalists, our people who basically don't have any fault about this current situation. Because at the end of the day, you know that Hamas is playing right now and Jihad is playing right now a PR game on the expense of the people who are living in Gaza.
I agree you. That's the regular people, they are paying the price, Ken. Yes, I want to tell you that's the problem now between the resistance people in Jihad Islami and Hamas, whatever, and Israel. That's now there is big challenge, and we are inside of them. But if we look for the reason which get us for this bad situation, that's Israel. Israel attacked us before. Israel all the time make a situation in Gaza. Israel all the time attacking targets in Gaza, make a big siege for Gaza. It's convey Gaza Strip like big jail, okay? And we cannot make export and import for everything. Israel control Gaza Strip. Israel is still occupiing Gaza. This is the problem. What happened now? This is the results of the conflict between.
Where are you, Ala? Where are you? Where are you, the journalists? Where are you, the people, to go out and to tell? You know what? To tell to the Hamas and to tell to Jihad stop. And the minute that you, the people in Gaza, will go out and will face them face to face, you know that you will be even stronger, even when you want to confront and show what Israel and the siege that Israel right now has on Gaza. But you are not even doing anything against the people who are hurting you inside the Gaza Strip.
I think the people cannot do anything because if the people see Israel killing them and shelling them and smashing them and do everything against them, they cannot say for the people who's fight and who's protect them, stop. I think this is the responsibility of the committee, the international committee, from the Arab countries, from the European countries, from America, from all the world. This is the responsibility of them to make ceasefire, to make truce. Egypt, I ask Egypt now to enter. Turkey, I ask Qatar to enter in this hell problem. I think the Palestinian people cannot do anything.
I understand that you cannot do anything, but you know, at the end of the day, the power is in your hand, not in the hands of anyone else, and you give them the power. I just hope that you will have a quiet night, Ala. Thank you very, very much for this. How can we...
You almost called the people of Gaza to rebel against their government.
Almost. But, you know, if it will change someone's mind, so maybe they can do something. And this is the fear. This is the fear that people have against actually...
I think it's an ego...
To hear a voice that says, yes, you are right.
Well, I think we
are afraid, and this is unbelievable.
But we are now in the situation in which both sides... are trying to maintain their egos and pride. Because if one of the sides, let's say Hamas, would say we are now declaring unilateral ceasefire for 12 hours, 24 hours to see the Israeli response, Israel will immediately follow it and will declare also will accept the ceasefire. And that's the problem. Israel is not ready, as Prime Minister Netanyahu earlier in the press conference said, to declare a unilateral ceasefire. He said the campaign would go on. But on the other hand, I believe if Hamas and Islamic Jihad agree on a ceasefire, announce it, and would say that let's say tomorrow at 6 a.m. or tomorrow 6 p.m. we unilaterally stop shelling Israel, Israel will follow suit.
I totally agree, because for Israel's interest, it is much better to have Hamas, a weakened Hamas, politically, militarily, and economically, than to have either some group which is more extreme, like Daesh, CICI, or SISI, or a chaotic situation. So I certainly agree. Again, the problem I think with Hamas, either they do not assess accurately the situation because they are hiding, or again, they miscalculate. And because of miscalculations, there are many
faults.
Let's
hope that there won't be any unity government between in the Gaza Strip between all these current, let's say, terrorist groups that are flourishing in the Gaza Strip, and no one right now is actually
Well, that's one of the
stopping
problems of Hamas, that on their backyard, small jihad organizations, and I am told by some sources there are already 17 small factions in Gaza which are renegade.
I wanted to end with an optimistic note, but now
no,
you're telling me 17. I'm just
but they are
and
still.
This is just Friday.
But they are still small and weak.
We have to go. We have to go for a break, and we're actually finishing our special edition. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for being with me. Have a great weekend. We'll be here back tomorrow.